This is Fallout Leftovers, and I'm talking Nuka-Cola. Because Nuka-Cola. I'll probably also talk vaults. Honestly, just in general, iconic elements of Fallout. Because Bethesda seems to have some sort of twisted obsession with these iconic elements. It's the same reason that there's bottle caps in 4 and 76, even though it really doesn't make sense in either game. Nuka-Cola was just one of the many aspects of the post-war world in Fallouts 1 and 2. You could get addicted to Nuka-Cola, but the only thing the addiction would do was clog up your text box on the bottom left with messages about how you could really go for a Nuka-Cola about now. You know, a very innocuous but very frustrating addiction compared to alcoholism or buff out or mentats. Other than that, Nuka-Cola was really just part of the game. You know, it was up there with any of the other prepackaged foodstuffs you could find in those first two games. It was just another healing item. Fallout 3, I believe, was the first one. Actually, no, Fallout Tactics was the first one to introduce other flavors. Because in Chicago, in Fallout Tactics, you could find, I believe it was just called Cherry Nuka-Cola. And it was just in both cases, it was just a play on Coke, and Cherry Coke in this case. But that was that. That was the joke, if you could even call it that. And then again, it appeared in Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. I believe it was still, there was the Cherry Nuke, but then there was the regular, and then, of course, the previously mentioned Bottle of Piss. Fallout 3 was really the one to start introducing other flavors. And they make a big deal out of Nuka-Cola in Fallout 3. Probably because Bethesda really didn't have any other iconic elements to tell people, hey, this is Fallout. So you have Sierra, who wants, I think it was 30 bottles of Nuka-Cola Quantum, and then she gives you a recipe for, I think it was like Quantum Pie or Nuka Grenades or something. Maybe both. But that was that. New Vegas introduced a rival cola, Sunset Sarsaparilla, but then it introduced a couple other flavors of Nuka-Cola. There was Quartz, Victory, I think one more, and then Regular and Quantum. There were like, I think 3 Quantums in all of New Vegas. And then Fallout 4 just goes ham. There's like 10, 12 different varieties of Nuka-Cola. You know, there's, what was it, Nuka Wild, Nuka Rum. Fallout 4 finally gives Quartz and I believe Victory justification as to why they exist. 76 introduced Nuka Coffee, and then a different version of Quantum and a different version of Quartz, according to documents in one of the bottling plants. And that's the other thing. A bottling plant never shows up in a game until Fallout 3. 3 has one. 76 has a regional office, I believe. 4, I think, has a regional office. But 4 also has Nuka World, which is just a huge... It's simultaneously Disney World and then the Hershey's theme park. And Bethesda doesn't know whether they want to parody the Hershey's theme park or they want to parody Disney World. Because in Fallout 4 Nuka World, you can go and visit the severed head of the guy who invented Nuka-Cola. And he's still alive, and he lives in a jar, and he hates it, and he wants you to kill him. But because you do a quest for Sierra from Fallout 3, in Fallout 4, you can just have her spend time with the guy who invented Nuka-Cola, and that's a valid way to end that quest. Nuka World sucks. Nuka World is easily the worst DLC Bethesda... I can't say that. Because they put out a ton of terrible DLCs for Fallout 4. Give it up for the one that allows you to build conveyor belts or animal cages. Yippee. But in terms of story DLCs, Nuka World is probably the worst of the bunch, because you can't play any of that content unless you side with the Raiders. And if you side with the Raiders, then you better be playing somebody else's ending. Otherwise, you might not be able to complete the game. If you're playing the Minutemen, Preston will walk out on you, and I don't think you can get him back. So there is no wild card. And then your only other option is to kill every single raider in the park, and that takes forever because there's like 200 of them. I don't know. I'm sick of Nuka-Cola. Fallout 4 introduced Vim, which I was fine with, but then they started doing the Nuka-Cola thing with Vim. There's like Captain's Blend and a couple other flavors that all glow in the dark. And no explanation is ever given as to why they glow in the dark. They just do. And it's frustrating and it's irritating and I really don't like it. But then you've got the caps, which I've already aired out my grievances with caps in Fallout 4, and they shouldn't be in 76 because of the hub. The hub was the first settlement to start using bottle caps. There's a series-wide running joke that bottle caps are an easy, currency if the world does go to hell. The think tank talks about it. Because one of the members of the think tank proposed that bottle caps would probably be the best bet for a post-war coin because they're identifiable, they're hard to reproduce without specialized equipment, and they're all painted. And paints and pigments are hard to come by as well. And that's why the sink can take caps. Because it was designed as kind of like I don't know what the word is. It was designed as a test for the sink's shop system. Because again, one of the members had proposed that would be the best choice for a post-war currency. But I don't know if we can even take that necessarily as gospel. Because, again, Old World Blues really complicates New Vegas. Because you have things like the Cazadors, which I mispronounced in the video, and the Night Stalkers, and the Spore People, and the living plants in Honest Hearts. And then you've got, the vending machines in Dead Money. Old World Blues is found all throughout that game and the other DLCs. I don't know. The other iconic element that really bothers me is Vault Boy. Vault Boy is just way overused right now. He's every single quest marker, he's every single perk icon, he's every single weapon icon, he's all over the game, he's in all the marketing. At E3, when they're announcing a new Fallout, what do? They release cartoons of Vault Boy. Without fail, it's always cartoons of Vault Boy. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating because, I want to like the character of Vault Boy, but it's just so overdone right now. I think 3 in New Vegas were fine. Because 3 in New Vegas, he only appears in most, but not all, perk icons. And then, on the weapon icons, he's holding the weapon. And that's it. There weren't blind bag toys that you could get at goddamn Hot Topic. They weren't sticking him on lunch boxes to be mass-produced. You couldn't open up the Fallout 3 strategy guide and have every page have a Vault Boy drawing on it. And so, honestly, when 76 brought back Pip-Boy, which is like the little red character, I was thrilled. I legitimately like Pip-Boy more than I like Vault Boy, because Pip-Boy at least got 20 years to disappear from the public eye. Vault Boy got 10, and has spent the last 10 just overexposed everywhere they can put a Vault Boy. But Pip-Boy's just a funny little boy. The two characters are disgustingly similar. I mean, leave it up to it being drawn by the same person. But, I don't know. I worry that Pip-Boy is going to face the same fate. Whatever Fallout game is next, he's going to be on all of the icons for everything. He's going to be the one holding the weapons. He's going to be the one, telling you what your quests are. He's going to be the one that has all the merchandise made of him. And Vault Boy is just really going to only appear on the front or the back of the box. That's my worry. Like, iconic elements are nice, but you can't just make a game out of iconic elements. And Bethesda has done that 2, almost 3 times now. Actually, 4. Fallout Shelter is only Vault Boy in caps. Like, that's the whole game. And vaults. I'm also sick of vaults. I shouldn't be sick of vaults, because that's the point of Fallout. When they were first making the game, it was called Vault 13, a GURPS post-nuclear adventure, or something along those lines. Like, Vault 13 is where the game begins, and where it ends. It's one of your major objectives in Fallout 2. Vault 101 is where Fallout 3 takes place. Vault 111 is where Fallout 4 takes place. Vault 76 is where Fallout 76 takes place. But one thing to keep in mind is Fallout 2, you don't even play as a vault dweller. In Fallout 2, you just simply play as a character who is given your grandfather, your great-grandfather, or your grandma or great-grandma. You're given your ancestor, the Fallout 1 protagonists, Pip-Boy and Vault Suit. Conveniently, it fits both characters. But in Fallout 2, you just simply play as a citizen of Arroyo. You don't use bottle caps to do business, you use NCR dollars. Vault Boy isn't weapon icons or anything of that sort. If you get addicted to chems, it tells you in the middle left side of the screen. When you equip a weapon, you see a pre-render of that weapon at the bottom center of the screen. Vault Boy only appears in the opening movie of Fallout 2. And he might make a couple smaller appearances throughout Fallout 2. But it's not like Fallout 3 or 4 where, that character is everywhere. Your quests are just text. And the quest titles are also just very simple and obvious. Like, the quest to defeat the Master isn't called anything like, the nuclear option. Or anything like that. Or the Waters of Life. Or I am become death. It's just simply kill the Master. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Fallout 2. I think the turn-based gameplay is... It's hard for me to stay enraptured at the turn-based gameplay. Fallout 2 is also a very difficult game. And then third, and most notably, Fallout 2 just contains a whole lot of slurs and unsavory, just in general. There's an entire quest line where you can become a porn star. I don't like Fallout 2. It's a little too crass for my liking. And sometimes the pop culture references and 80s references are a little distracting. Again, talking about things like the Pancor jackhammer and the P90. It's really a case where I think of the 2 DOS games, I think Fallout 1 handled it better, but there are a lot of things to like about Fallout 2. Most notably how it kind of bucks the trends of Fallout 1. It knew what was trends for the series, and it threw them all away. The bottle cap is going to become the currency in all these games. Well, screw you, we're going to use $1. It even really doesn't change much. But it's just the fact that it is different enough. Vaults are going to become a major element of all the Fallout games. Fallout 2, you play as a citizen of a town. Fallout 3, Van Buren, you play as a prisoner. Your character's vault history doesn't mean anything. And that's why I think a lot of people liked New Vegas, because while there is still a bottle cap, you can do your business in NCR dollars or Legion Daenerys. You don't have to roleplay as a former vault dweller. Doc Mitchell gives you a Pip-Boy in a Vault 21 jumpsuit, but who's to say those were yours? You can make that decision to immediately, cast that stuff aside and just say, well, I'm going to get back my old threads, and then just buy up, the cowboy gear. You go to the general store, and they're like, how can I help? And you're just like, Cowboys, 5. Cowboys, 9. Josh. Sorry, I am losing my mind. The iconic elements of Fallout are really only iconic in Bethesda's eyes, because they're always fucking using them. Obsidian and Black Isle didn't. They used a couple of them, but they would counteract them. Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 are all kind of just the same thing. And that's what's frustrating. If 76 still used dollars, I wouldn't mind the fact that, you start in a vault plastered with Vault Boy memorabilia, and all your photo frames are Vault themed or Vault Boy themed. I wouldn't mind that Nuka-Cola is the only beverage you can find. Now, for the next Fallout game, I am sincerely hoping that all of the trends get bucked, because it needs to happen, because Bethesda needs to have a firmer grip on this series if they want to prove that they can handle it, because right now they're kind of just doing Fallout 1, but with slightly different flavors, like every 3 or 4 years. And I don't think that that's helpful. I don't think that's beneficial. I don't honestly think there's any reason for anyone to buy Fallout 5 if it's just like Fallout 4 or 3 or 76. So if they ever do another Fallout, I want like next to no Nuka-Cola. Like Nuka-Cola, Sunset Sarsaparilla, and Vim. Just all in one pool. And you can kind of collect from all three. And there isn't like there's not like 12 varieties of Nuka-Cola, but only one Sunset Sarsaparilla. I want a non-bottle cap currency. Hell, here's a cool thing you could do. In the next Fallout, let the player like take like an exam to like fill out their past. Like, where are you from? Oh, and you get like a map of the U.S. You can kind of click around and there'd be like different tribes or different settlements. Like if you click around Nevada, you'd have a list of like, Novak, Boulder, Freeside, New Vegas, Good Springs, and a couple other settlements that aren't listed in New Vegas. If you click like Illinois, you can be, from downtown Chicago, or you could be from Noyes on the north side, or you could be from Cicero, or you could be from, and you could throw a couple vaults in there too. You can be like, oh, I'm from Vault, 57 in Indiana, and the Enclave and Vault Tech decided to torture us by making it so the only food we can have after our first year is mashed potatoes. We only had a year's worth of other foods, but like 75 years of mashed potatoes. And, our, food chip or whatever, after that year was up, only just started spitting out mashed potatoes. We didn't even have any salt or pepper. It was fucked up. Let me like click like a random vault out in the world. Or let me just pick a settlement. Click California, where do I want to be from? Fucking Arroyo! So I can it's the real sequel to Fallout 2. Where am I from? Oh yeah, I'm from Arfu, the flippin' vampire town in Fallout 3. Let me do that. Let me just tell the world that I'm that. Where am I from? I'm from Miami. I don't know what's in Miami right now in the Fallout world. There's Fallout Miami, but that's like a mod. It feels official. I want it to be official, but I don't want it to be official because Bethesda would then feel the need to be like, well, you gotta start in a vault, bottle caps, we got ghouls and super mutants. No! Please get rid of some of these iconic elements and make your own world. Like, extrapolate from Fallout. Ask the fans what they want from Fallout. And I guarantee you, a lot of them want choices that matter, a deep role-playing experience, and letting us be somebody from outside of a vault would let us have that, kind of. And they want a game that's actually, like, true to the older Fallouts. I feel like Bethesda could make it work, but I feel like them trying to make it work isn't going to work at the same time. It feels paradoxical, but I feel like the status quo is easier to sell people on, and that's why every Fallout game has a vault, and a vault dweller, and caps, and ghouls, and superb mutants, and it's always got some sci-fi BS attached to it. The Enclave always shows up. Fallout 4 is the only game which... Fallout 4 contains only new factions, save for the Brotherhood of Steel. I guess it doesn't, because the Railroad and the Institute both get mentioned in Fallout 3. But, like, they created their own unique, like, factions. They can do something like a New Vegas without having to staple androids to it, or nuke these bats back to the Stone Age, or whatever. It could just be a story about people. This is Fallout Leftovers, And we are talking Fallout 4, and specifically Fallout 4's most technologically advanced, most coherent, most consistent faction, Raiders. It's really messed up that in the lore in Fallout 4, the only group to have made their own unique post-war power armor are the Raiders. X01 power armor, formerly Advanced power armor, the Enclave stuff, was retconned into being in production in 2077 in very limited quantities. But the Enclave took those blueprints and mass-produced that power armor for their own troops after the Great War. So, that doesn't count anymore. That was originally a post-war power armor. X01 was entirely post-war. Now it's not. Raider power armor is the only post-war power armor. And that's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. Also, between the Raiders and the Super Mutants, both factions are much more collectivist than any of the other factions in the game. You know, the only way to make the Minutemen collectivists is to link them together with, oh god, what are they called? Not merchants. Like the caravans? You have to link together your settlements with caravans in order to share resources between them. Then, you know, you can have a great big farm that's tended to, and you can, you know, use the castle for, you know, water pumping. You can have a third settlement that's just a bunch of shops, and they're all connected, so they all give excess resources to each other. But other than them, you know, the individual components of the Institute are all kind of competing against each other. The Brotherhood of Steel is still like a serfs and knights sorts of hierarchy. And the railroad helps out other people, and they help themselves. So I guess they're involved too. But no group takes it further than the Raiders. Human group. Super Mutants, according to Strong, are collectivists. They share their resources. They're sick, and they're injured, and they're elderly. And that's why they're still around, even though FEV experiments in the Institute have been over for decades. And that's ridiculous. It really does feel like Bethesda, at least I hope, Bethesda realizes that what they've done is they've created two factions that are both socialist-leaning, that are their longest-running factions in this game. You know, it's kind of ridiculous. I say longest-running because the Institute, while they created the Super Mutants, come to an abrupt end in 3 of the 4 endings in Fallout 4. And it really seems like the Minutemen ending is the canon ending. You know, Preston Garvey is in Fallout Shelter, and he appeared in Fallout 76 in, like, E3 footage. And, you know, the Minutemen have all sorts of merchandise. I really think the Minutemen are the canon ending to Fallout 4. The same way that, destroying the Enclave, not the Brotherhood of Steel, is the canon ending to Fallout 3. So, the Institute comes to an end, but the Super Mutants survive. I mean, they get shot up and attacked, but they are collectivists. They share resources between each other, they look out for each other. They're going to survive another 20, 50, 100 years on the East Coast. There's just no getting around that. But anyways, the Raiders, you know, you can find letters from one Raider to another. They talk to each other. They try not to hurt each other. If you do a lot of sneaking, you might cause them to attack each other because they're so on edge looking for you. But they usually don't kill their friend, and if they do respond with actual, like, heartfelt upset. They are the largest faction in Fallout 4 by a wide margin. Based on the fact that raiders can respawn in dungeons you've played before, as well as loot, that implies that raiders are always moving in. So there's no way to know exactly how many raiders are in the wasteland. It's gotta be thousands. Like, literal thousands. And in second place, the next biggest, like, faction or the next biggest faction or settlement in Fallout 4 is the Institute at, like, a couple hundred people. And then maybe Diamond City at a few dozen. Completely decked out Minutemen ending with all the different settlements. Yeah, there's like 10 people per settlement. You'll probably have a couple hundred people under your belt. But there are literally thousands of raiders in Fallout 4. They have their own music. They have their own culture. They have their own, groups. But they still look out for each other. There's not like, raiders aren't split up into, Fallout 1 or 2, or maybe New Vegas. Like, there's jackals and fiends. That's definitely New Vegas. And those are different types of raiders that attack each other. 4 doesn't have that. It's just one big group of raiders. Nuka World has 3 different, or maybe even 4 different types of raiders that you can work with. And in 76, there are a couple different factions of raiders that you'll meet. I think one of them is called like the Blood Eagles or something like that. So Bethesda is making, not just one big generic raider group. And they really need to do that because one big generic raider group sucks. It's straight up one of the most frustrating things with Fallout 4. The raiders are like one of the most advanced civilizations in the Commonwealth. And they shouldn't be. There is no reason that the Commonwealth raider problem is as big or as complex as it is. Sure, it took them 200 years to build power armor, and their power armor is really just a chassis with some welded stuff on it. But I'll put it this way. The Minutemen don't have their own power armor. Now, they have paint jobs for their power armor, but none of them have actually welded pieces together to produce their own armor. The Institute doesn't have their own power armor. I don't even think they wear power armor in-game. Brotherhood of Steel. Those are the guys who should absolutely be building their own power armor. It's implied that the T-60 was a prototype that they assembled, but that's just like the X-01, like the Enclave armor. That is also pre-existing blueprints. That's not really, what we're asking for. We're asking for completely new designs. And of all the factions in the game, the Raiders are the only ones who have made their own unique power armor. This is Fallout Leftovers. We're talking the games that aren't Fallout. Outer Worlds and Wasteland. Outer Worlds is probably the easier one to talk about. It's a spiritual successor, kind of focusing more on the capitalistic edge than the mutually assured destruction and that sort of sentiment, the nationalism. I've played a little bit of it. I played like 3 or 4 hours. It didn't hook me the way I hoped it would. The combat is very basic and boring. And it's because it's trying to put, the combative skills on the same plane as the non-combative skills. It's about as deep as, passing your speech checks and things. I appreciate that lockpicking and computer hacking is just press a button and you're in. I don't think we need ridiculous minigames, and they did a good job at ensuring that we don't. But it's fine. I'm also not particularly fond of the world. It's just kind of too far out there for my liking. I mean, the game takes place like what? The 2600s, the 2700s? Too far out. But it's fun, and it makes good points about, the world. And if you play your character right, you can, go on this whole anti-capitalist crusade, anti-corporate crusade, up until the very end where you can then sell out. And then the game tries to sell the player on a fictitious product that's within the world of the Outer Worlds. And I think it's got a lot of cynicism. That game is very cynical. It honestly, and this is going to sound weird and maybe a little incorrect, but it reads like a Calvin and Hobbes strip, but as an RPG. It's very cynical. It loves its wordplay. Very kind of, I don't want to say anti-technology, but very against technology usurping the rest of our lives. And very much against, the corporate technocrats that would make that happen. It's like if Calvin's dad wrote a video game. And then Wasteland, I haven't played any of the Wastelands. I was originally going to play and complete The Outer Worlds, Wasteland, Wasteland 2, and Wasteland 3 for this video. That is way too much. That becomes a completely different conversation, and I realized that is a completely different conversation, so I don't need to play all of those games. I just used their trailers. But with that in mind, Wasteland kind of scratches a completely different itch. That one is... It's kind of just like, oh, we don't like this AI. Oh, people in a nuclear world, am I right? And they are. They're fine games. They went like strategy. Wastelands 2 and 3. I am not good at strategy. I flunked out of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle. There was no way I'm going to be good at Wasteland. So I didn't play any of those either. I do want to one day play Wasteland 2, and I definitely want to see Wasteland 3. Wasteland 3 caught my attention the moment they were like, yeah, here is a cult fascinated with Ronald Reagan. I'm like, yeah, they exist. They're called Republicans. Zing! That was too easy. But they're fine. But they are completely different beasts. None of them really touch on, the mutually assured destruction and the warfare and, the capitalism critique. All bundled together like Fallout does. And I think that's for the better. I think we really only need one game talking about what Fallouts 1 and 2 talk about. Like one game now. Because those are older games, and the Bethesda series doesn't do a great job of kind of explaining the themes of the DOS-era Fallouts. They kind of over-glamorize war. They're very kind of wishy-washy in their critique. And I just personally feel like we can do better. But I don't think, we need a whole series that tackles every single thing Fallouts 1 and 2 tackled, but just continued. Like, if we get, another game, any game, that kind of tackles that, that pointlessness of war and, the sickness of late-stage capitalism and fascism hand in hand. If we got a series or a game that touched on that, then Fallout can just be, whatever. Buck Rogers with, a weird conservative slant. It shouldn't have that. Fallout 1 and 2 make it very clear that that is the sort of mindset that ends the world. And, oh god, I think I just realized what it is. In the opening of Fallout, War Never Changes is a dismissal of humanity. It is kind of it's a disdain for us. And it's become kind of a rallying cry. It's definitely said with disdain, humanity will doom itself again and again and again and again. And that is a huge flaw of ours that we will not work on. Fallout 3 kind of treats it the same way, but 476, and I don't know if it gets said in Shelter, but modern Bethesda, War Never Changes is it's a stamp of approval. That's the problem. Yeah, but they're fine games. They don't need to one-to-one, step onto the yard of Fallout to be good games. They can, accidentally kick their ball through Mr. Fallout's yard and, step through it. But they don't need to hang out in the yard, I guess is my ultimate point. This is Fallout Leftovers, and we are talking kind of the historical element to Fallout, but also how the games approach conservatism. Because Black Isle and the modern games kind of approach it from two completely different angles, and it's a little alarming. What made the Enclave so terrifying in Fallout 2 is if you go speak to President Richardson, he sounds presidential. This is somebody who, even though I completely do not agree with Richardson's views on the post-nuclear world, he kind of has... vocally, it feels like he's either a parody of Bush Sr. or maybe Clinton. Definitely a former U.S. president at the time that the game came out in 1998. He stays level-headed, he calls you a citizen, he talks about the United States and how he wants to restore its former glory. He talks about how that involves, I made the joke in the Fallout 2 segment. He talks about making America great again. And that was Reagan's re-election campaign. So even though he holds these, deeply fascist views, Richardson is a very smooth talker. And it's very easy for, somebody to, drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to what he says and what he does. The military he leads is definitely a very modern American military, even though they live in, postmodern, post-nuclear times. They go and break for lunch. You see them talk about that in front of Frank Horrigan in one of the cutscenes in Fallout 2. They are definitely conservative. They are conservative, but they're still underneath this veneer of being a good person. They hold deeply flawed fascist views, and that's how fascism is meant to work. You have people who are definitely not nice people. They hold bigoted views. They want to eradicate populations. But they talk to you like anybody on the street. They're not cartoonishly evil. Fallout 3 and 76 both feature the Enclave, and in both they are cartoonishly evil. John Henry Eden in Fallout 3 doesn't feel like a real person. Whereas President Richardson talks to the player like a real person, John Henry Eden in his weird little fireside radio chat thingies is just kind of there. It's easy to see that he will be kind of a villainous character if you give him some time. As early as Megaton, you actually hear people talk about the Enclave and they're like, that's the former U.S. government. I don't really know how they would know. Especially because the Enclave doesn't show up in the game proper until Liam Neeson dies. But I guess the big thing is, in Fallout 2, the Enclave feels like a subtle parody of fascism and conservatism in the United States. In Fallout 3, you use a gigantic, communist-hating, nuke-chucking robot to destroy cartoonishly fascist people outfitted with alien technology. After confronting John Henry Eden, who is voiced by Malcolm McDowell, and is kind of outwardly evil, even the first time you hear him, I think most people kind of get the vibe. I got the vibe the very first time I played Fallout 3 and heard him talk, that he was going to be the bad guy of the game. It just hit me as soon as I heard it, and boy golly was I kind of right. But as cartoonishly evil as the Enclave is in Fallout 3, they're also kind of not. Most of the Enclave disagrees with Eden's plans to put FEV in the water, which would then kill off the ghouls and the mutants somehow. Let's ignore the fact that FEV in the water is what made the super mutants in 76. But FEV in the water, I guess, will kill the super mutants in DC. Sure, whatever. But most of the Enclave, and Colonel Autumn even outright admits that he disagrees with that plan. The Enclave just wants control of the purifier so they can distribute the water. And they are kind of the bad guy for that. In 76, you have Thomas Eckert, who puts a vote to continue the war with China, and everybody that votes against continuing the war gets executed. Their plan then includes, the Liberator robots, Super Mutants, the West Tech Mutants, which is like the Snallygaster and the Wendigo. And eventually when those don't work, First of all, I hate the fact that there was an enemy called the Wendigo in 76, because the Wendigo is an actual, like, Native American thing. And Fallout 76 kind of just appropriates it for a ghoul. That is a little messed up. But when that doesn't work, when none of that actually, like, lets them continue the war with China, because of course it won't. Because they were trying to, raise the DEFCON level so they could get access to the nukes, so that way they could then nuke China. That's when they unleashed the Scorch Beasts. And that's a plan that immediately backfires on them. And that's the thing that bothers me with 76, is they're even more cartoonishly over-exaggerated than they were in 3, where they were ridiculously exaggerated compared to Fallout 2. And it's one of the big reasons why when any fan game or fan mod or even just Fallout game in general now mentions including the Enclave, I kind of roll my eyes. It's done to death. We literally don't need the Enclave anymore. They were in Fallout 2 and that was enough. I don't think we needed to be like, oh, they had a second base on the East Coast. Oh, they had a third base in West Virginia. And then Fallout Miami. As much as I like Fallout Miami, it's like, oh, here they are again. It's like, no. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where there's, like, just tons of Enclave bases all over the U.S., and the oil rig will have meant nothing. It's already kind of there, and I really hate that. And then even outside of the Enclave, there is a ton of, conservative and pro-military jargon kind of thrown throughout the game. And it's used in-universe as kind of a sign of just how conservative the U.S. got. But the parody is only, like, skin deep. The closest thing to a deep, nuanced critique of this sort of ideology is in Fallout 76. There is a quiz you have to perform for the military to determine which of the 3 family members are a communist. And it's the one who likes FDR. He likes FDR. His dad just got fired from his job for getting injured. And, they barely make enough money, so they want social programs. So the kid is a communist. And that's it. That's as deep as it goes. And in that case, the game kind of has this, liking a former U.S. president and wanting your dad to have a job is signs of communism. And that's the whole joke. And it's not the most nuanced joke, but that is the most nuanced one in 76. Detached from Fallout, that's very surface level. Otherwise, you get things like Liberty Prime. Like, just how fascist was America? They built a giant communist-hating nuke-chucking robot. It's not a joke. It's nothing. And that's just, in general, how Bethesda Fallout is. And it's a shame. It's truly a shame. And I'm aware of the fact that the games have gotten more conservative, less anti-corporate, less anti-war, even, ever since Bethesda took over. And as they've made more and more money. Those sorts of statements are very easy to make as a small, independent studio. They're a lot harder to make when the game costs you $100 million to produce. So, maybe what Fallout needs to be then is smaller. People are going to buy the game, no matter what. People are going to buy a Fallout pretty much no matter what. So I guess the big question becomes, can you do that sort of satire, like the actual sort of satire that was in the DOS games, on half the budget of the current AAA games? And if you can't, then, there's other ways to take that angle. New Vegas did a fantastic job kind of approaching that anti-fascist, anti-war sentiment with Ulysses, and then kind of the anti-corporate, anti-establishment angle with Mr. House in the independent Vegas endings. Fallout 76, again, if it was just focusing on kind of like the labor board issues of West Virginia circa 2077, it'd be totally fine. So with that in mind, I guess the question is, what part of Fallout do the board of directors behind ZeniMax dislike? And if Microsoft lets them be detached from that board of directors, then that'd be great. But I sincerely doubt that that's going to happen. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. This is Fallout Leftovers, and this is a bit of a meta one. I am talking about Fallout in analysis. So I've mentioned a couple times that I started work on this script in 2017. That is not an exaggeration. Granted, just saying I started work in 2017 doesn't tell the full story, so let's start from the beginning. So our story begins when I was taking a media ethics class. Somebody in the media ethics class wrote about Fallout 4. And it got me really thinking, because I didn't like Fallout 4, but trying to explain exactly why I didn't like Fallout 4 was difficult. I believe at that time I was also in a class called something along the lines of making deep games with one Doris Rush. She is a lovely instructor and, really pushed me to think about game design from a more objective standpoint. I would not be anywhere where I am now without that class and without her, because she was amazing. There is a reason she is listed in the credits, and it's because without her I wouldn't have thought about Fallout nearly as deeply as I did. I knew there was something weird and maybe bad with the Fallout games that Bethesda was putting out. And it wasn't even just their performance. Fallout 4 ran like garbage, but it actually didn't. It was, for whatever reason, capped to 35 FPS on my laptop. And it might be because I've got like a 75 hertz display. Maybe. I've heard stories that people who play it on a TV or a 60 hertz display, it runs just fine. They get 60 FPS. Sometime about probably the second or third recording session on Fallout 4, I actually installed a mod that allowed me to set my own frame rate cap, and I just bumped it up to 60, I think it was like 61 or 65, and that was it. It ran great. There were still some slowdown bits, but for what it was worth, I was running the game okay. I was using compressed textures that I had to load into folders myself. I was running the game on like medium-ish settings at 1600 by 900 with some other things turned down or off. But Fallout 4 runs like garbage, but that wasn't even my issue. I felt disconnected from the world. It didn't feel like 3 or New Vegas. And some would argue that would be good. I am not one of them. It felt like a completely different series. It felt more, Buck Rogers meets Blade Runner meets Spaceman Spiff from Calvin and Hobbes. You're kind of just going around attacking whatever until the game tells you that you've done a deep moral quandary on the whole Commonwealth. I never finished Fallout 4 until this. But the point of the video was I was going to compare Fallout 4 from like a thematic standpoint to the rest of the Fallout series. Fallout 4, in the original idea I had, was kind of the star of the show. But I needed to begin with Fallouts 1 and 2. We needed a baseline. So the original idea for the script I had in 2017 was a lot like the script I finally released in 2020. But there were a couple of exceptions. I think the first big one was it was just a way less confident script. I mean, go back to my early videos. Go back to the Raid World War II reviews. Go back to, what was it, Planet Coaster. I talked about the microtransactions in Overwatch. The 2017 videos weren't great. Yo Noid, I still like because the developers all liked it. And I guess it was pity, because I was like a channel with like 200 subscribers when they found it. So I understand why it got the positive reception it got. If I released that video now, verbatim, it wouldn't go over well, because I really don't talk about a lot. I praise the aesthetic, and I mentioned that each of the levels kind of have their own unique feel, and that's about it. And then, of course, the Doom 2016. It's not a review. I really should change that name. It's more of like a personal, like, emotional analysis. Like, Doom, gameplay-wise, and Doom 2016 are two completely different series. Eternal kind of knows what it wants to be more. 2016 is just much more gauntlet-y, and I didn't like that. But it's about the emotional response that 2016 and the modern Dooms kind of evoke. That's really kind of what I'm getting at between where I was in 2017 and now. I was just way less confident in being able to kind of explain what I'm talking about. And I immediately hit a roadblock with the Fallout 1 segment, like 2 paragraphs in, because, honestly, just because I didn't know exactly what I wanted from the video yet. And also, I hadn't played Fallout 1, nor had I really looked at it on the wiki. I'll admit, I didn't play Fallouts 1 or 2 until after I wrote the script for the video. That's why details on both games are scarce, and 1 more than 2. Because 2 kind of falls more in line with New Vegas. A lot of things that are in 2 are in New Vegas. But Fallout 1 is so detached, and its characters are so, I don't want to say throwaway, but other than Richard and Harold and Tandy, the characters in Fallout 1 aren't necessary to understand the rest of the series. Fallout 1 is way more standalone. And while that's a cool thing, it also made it hard for me to talk about it because I just never played Fallout 1. I didn't understand the controls. It wasn't until I played it again now in 2020 that I kind of figured out how it plays. I still was making a lot of amateur moves. I was, using the reload button. You can open inventory and just drag bullets onto the gun and load up a magazine. But confidence in not playing Fallout 1 was what kind of put that video dead in the ground. I realized it was going to be a much more structured, almost collegiate level video than what I was used to at the time. I would have to, have sources. And I stressed so hard in 2017 and 2018 about finding collegiate sources talking about Fallout. Because for whatever reason, I had in my head that I needed a collegiate source or 2 or 3 to make the video sound more important. The script that I released, it's almost all just from the wiki. And the wiki, that cites its own sources. Most of them are either in-game dialogue or the Fallout Bible, which was just, I think, Avalone. Yeah, the one that has all the sexual harassment issues surrounding him. It was him just kind of going to the forums and answering people's questions in, 2000. Or it was something that I tried to extrapolate, and I either did successfully or I kind of fumbled on. Although I tried to cut most of the fumbles. For instance, in the New Vegas segment, I said that you could buy up the bulk ammo to scrap for lead. You cannot. So I said that. It was in the script. I said it out loud. I removed it. Incorrect. It is completely, entirely incorrect. And so after about early 2018, after Doom, I kind of shelved Fallout in analysis. I didn't have a name for it until after I wrote the script, and it's still not a great name, but it'll do. It's an analysis, not the analysis, because there's many ways to spin the world of Fallout, and I kind of focused on one particular angle and kind of just attacked it from as many kind of subdivisions as I could. I brought it back again later in 2018, but I didn't get much farther than I got the very first time. And then the third time third time's the charm. I started writing that script again probably May or early June. And it was definitely May. It was definitely like mid-May. And what I had written down of Fallouts 1 and 2 so far was about 15, 20-something minutes. And in my head, I kind of did quick math, and I was like, this video is probably going to be somewhere between, like the 40-minute mark and the 65-minute mark. It's definitely not going to be longer than Let's Talk About Payday 2. And then I got to Fallout 3. And all of a sudden, the video was 60-something minutes long. And I went, uh-oh. And then I got to New Vegas. And I added another, I think it was like 35 minutes to the video. And then I got to Fallout 4, which added almost an hour. Yeah, definitely caught me by surprise. Did not think this video was going to be over 2 hours long. I kept writing it, and I kept writing it, and I kept plugging away. And I finished the script sometime in July. It was in July. We emphasize the in, not the July, because it's what Orson Welles wouldn't want. But I finished the script it was like July 15th. I bought 76, though, July 3rd. And I started playing it July 5th. I played that game for about 2 or 3 weeks. It's a long game. That is such a long game. And I talk about the Enclave, and I don't have any footage of the Enclave. Because not only is it a long game, but everything from the Brotherhood of Steel on was like 40 levels higher. And I don't know if it was just because of the server I was on, or it might be because everybody nukes the Cranberry Bog. I don't know why. Never found that out. But as a result, all the high-level players hang around the Cranberry Bog. It's probably because that's what you have to nuke for I Am Become Death. That's my guess. But because high-level players hung out at the Cranberry Bog, all the enemies were as high of a level as they could be, which was like 65 and 70, I think. And I was level 28. I was not a very high level. And all these enemies, I was doing scratch damage to these enemies with anti-materiel rifles, Gatling guns, frag grenades, and 40 mils. It was insane. And I just kind of gave up. And then they fixed it. But for reference, they fixed it while I was editing. I played that until I just couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the footage I needed online. Or not even online, I just grabbed pictures off the wiki. I then played Fallout 4. I couldn't play through all of the 2 endings I needed. I needed the Minutemen and the Brotherhood of Steel. I didn't want to play through the whole game again just for the Brotherhood of Steel, so I asked Stephen George for some footage, and that was what you saw in the video. And then I played 3 and then New Vegas together as Tale of Two Wastelands. I was like level 48 or 49 by the time that game ended. I almost hit the level cap, except I didn't, because I had a mod that bumped the level cap up to 255, just in case. And then I played Fallout 1 and then Fallout 2. And I didn't play a lot of Fallouts 1 or 2 because I was on a time crunch. But by that point, I had the script finished, I was playing the games, and then I needed to edit this monstrosity. And as of when I'm recording this, I am still editing this monstrosity. I made good progress today. I edited like 25-30 minutes of Fallout 4. The problem is I have another 25 minutes of Fallout 4 to edit tomorrow. At the time I'm recording this, it's coming down to the very, very barest of wire. I think I can get Fallout 4 done tomorrow. Fallout 1, 2, and Van Buren are all kind of bundled together, and that's like a 30-minute segment, even unedited. So that's probably about 20 minutes with all my flubs taken out of it. I can get that done Tuesday as well. Wednesday and Thursday, I just need to plug away at 76, and kind of my conclusion. And then I need to take all 5 of the renders, which I rendered at a higher bitrate than usual, link them together, and then throw that out to the world. I'm hoping it does well at the time I'm recording this. I hope that video does very well, and I'm not just remembered for one game I stopped playing a year and a half ago. It would be very nice to be known for something different. And even if that's just the guy who called America kind of fascist for, 2.5 hours, I'm fine with that. Because I do wholeheartedly believe that this nation has flirted with fascism dozens of times in the past. And a lot of people would say, well, then leave the country if you don't like it. No, because I love the culture, and I love the people, and I love the architecture. I love Chicago so much that I would do anything to make this world work for every American. I want to see an America where everybody can kind of just live and let live. And we're all better, happier people for it. I want to live in an America where I can have children and not worry about the financial strain that will put on me. I want to live in an America where I and other people in my place can have a house. They can buy groceries. They can, they don't have to worry about putting their kids through school or college. I want to live in an America where the wealthy pays their fair share. And we strive to build a cleaner, more environmentally friendly world. We only get the one planet. Let's do the best we can with it. For that reason, I don't think we can look to the status quo. Because America's status quo is, employing former Nazis to keep our military stronger. Our status quo is spending $1 billion in COVID relief on a jet. Our status quo is internment camps. And I am fucking sick of our status quo. We can be better. We have the resources. We have the space. It's just time that the people who should be playing along, play along. Our wealthy have had it way too good for way too long. They're paying very little tax. They're paying, in some cases, they are the lowest tax bracket, period. And then we also have, all of the tax loopholes that let Amazon make money off the U.S. government. They got a tax refund. And they let, billionaire real estate magnates only pay $750 in taxes a year. It's the same tax scheme that lets corporations ask you, do you want to donate your change to charity? But then they can write that off on their taxes and pay less. You can't. That is what I'm talking about. That is our status quo. And it's a grisly, disgusting status quo that only works for the wealthy. It doesn't even work for the earth. We can do better. And that is why I am so keen to criticize this nation, because through criticism we can build a better nation. We just have to come together and make it happen. I don't know if I'll record more Fallout Leftovers after recording this one, but I have a feeling, just by saying what I've said, that I have recorded the last leftover.